We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-G-L-E-S Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes! Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Oh, here we go. We're dropping in on episode 254 of Drunk on the Ice, but we're in the morning time talking all things hockey. Mark, I woke up to a little bit of snow I wasn't anticipating. There was a little dusting on the ground. It's been a rough go for the Flyers lately, but we're here to talk all things Flyers. Mark, talk to me about you've been down at the what do we call it? I believe the vernaculars. You've been down at the barn and checking in on the guys. Talk to me about what's going on with these guys.
Yeah, I thought the last two games against Toronto, I thought were pretty good for the Flyers, even though they didn't win. I thought they played pretty well, and guys were they kind of handled the Leafs for large stretches, which isn't easy to do because they got a lot of talent and they're a very good team. They're a top team in the one of the top teams in the East, and I thought they played pretty well in those games. They had such a hard time, finishing off scoring plays and things like that. This last game against Dallas, though, that was not a good game. They did not play very well in that game. So you just kind of
that's the one that makes you go. It makes that weird face like you sucked on a lemon, going, what?
Yeah. So I mean, they're all losses, right? But the Leafs losses, I think, were a lot more encouraging than the Dallas loss. The Dallas loss was, I mean, they were severely outplayed in that game. Lots of blown coverages, and I think they had like 18 giveaways in that game.
It felt like a game that they were very disinterested in.
Yeah.
It's almost like it kind of felt like a letdown game.
Yeah.
Right. Like you had put so much into both of those games against Toronto, right? You had the home and home with Toronto where they lose both of them 3-2. But I think you saw some encouraging things in there that, like, you saw them battle a little bit. You saw them kind of, and the Leafs have a lot of top end talent, a lot of guys that will, without a whole lot of effort, make plays. That game against Dallas was just like made it like, it's hard to say. Like, they made it very, very disinteresting to watch.
Yeah. And I mean, too, with the coverages, I mean, Sam Ersson comes back in that game. He's been out since the 31st, and he comes back. Goaltending's been a little bit of a revolving door for the Flyers this year. And, in an ideal world, you want to come out and you want to really, like, make sure you're, the detail in your game is really, really fine because, goalie's been out for a while, and of course, both goals, the two early goals for Dallas, were right on the doorstep, right in front, right in the crease area.
Hmm.
And these last three games, I think teams have really kind of you're starting to see teams kind of really kind of attack the Flyers below the dots and getting to
Yeah.
the net because I think they feel they can, and
Well, I
so
think the evidence is there, right? The
yeah,
the play on the ice has kind of allowed other teams to go, yeah, we can figure out a way to make that area of the ice work. And because the goaltending has been really inconsistent, it's it's making it even easier. Um, right, you're talking about a team right now that's sitting at the bottom of the Metropolitan, um, really struggling. Um, and I even look at like the one play the other night where I have I can't remember if they were on a power play or not, but the the across the net pass from Mitchkoff to Tippett, and Tippett has like the entire goal and misses, and
yeah,
it's like, and listen, those are in the last couple years, those are normally goals that he buries, and it's not it's it's not a consistent thing for him, but I feel like there are a lot of opportunities to put pucks in the net that are being missed.
yeah. That was crazy. I mean, first of all, it was a terrific pass by Mitch Goff to locate him there,
I
and
mean, the vision is wild.
yeah, it was a great pass, and it was one of those plays too. I think where um, I think Tippett had more time than he realized. That puck got on him quick, and he probably had a couple seconds to kind of corral it and then
Just
rip it
bury it.
into the top of the top of the net, and probably would have hit it because I mean um, the goaltender was kind of he was way out. I think the defender was kind of down and out. Maybe he would have tried. I mean, he would have attempted to block it, but um, but I think he probably had more time than he thought. Um, which is it's a fast game. It moves really fast. That happens sometimes, but
Hmm.
uh, just it's one of those things with this group. And Tippett can be up and down. When he's going, he looks great, and then
Yeah.
when he's not scoring goals, he can really you watch him play, and you're just kind of like you wonder about the extension and the contract and all those other things.
Yeah.
So. I mean, it was a tough. It was a tough. They should have gotten a point out of that game because he should have hit that. But
Yeah. I think, Mark, for me, like with Tippett, for me, I feel like I've seen there's enough there that I've seen that I'm looking at it going, I can see like like everything is a product of its environment, right? So you surround them with talent. When there's more talent, there's more plays to be made. Um, I think that while it doesn't look good right at this moment, I feel like he's a guy who can ascend, and the ceiling is a little bit higher than where it is right now. Which you're going to need guys like that up and down the roster when this thing does turn. Um, but I got to imagine that, like, at the same time, for a kid like Mitchkov, right, those passes where he's like, it's almost like you shake your head, like, "Come on, dude, what are you doing?" Like, like in whatever that sounds like in Russian, like it's just like, come on, man, like
yeah,
you got to bury that, and it's you hope that at some point like that starts to like he can start to elevate the play of others, and I think you see that in glimpses. It's just he doesn't have the puck experience and at this particular level to like put a team on his back.
right. Yeah,
And this team really isn't built to be put on a back of one player either.
right. And I'm sure that's the case. It feels like there's been a few plays this year where he's made a really like dynamic play with the puck, and just a line mate couldn't finish it off or whatever the case
Mhm.
was. I know I could think back to the road trip against uh, the West Coast trip out of the Christmas break, and uh,
Mm,
there
I
was there was a game
I
in
know what you're talking
LA.
about. I can't remember. I can't remember the play, but I remember thinking the same thing.
Yeah, he was playing with Lawton Scott Lawton, and there was a couple instances where he got him the puck in like really prime real estate, and Lawton couldn't finish the scoring playoff. But it's too. You're right. He's not at that point, and sometimes I think we forget because we're so excited about him that like he still is just 20 years old, and
Like
he's
newly
still
20.
he's still very much learning the nuances of the level. I think they should be really out there letting him play. I think there may have been. I think there is a little bit of. I can understand the sentiment and people feeling that there's a little bit more. There's a little overreach here going on with the coaching and things like that. I wish they didn't do that, but at the same time, I do understand that his game is not perfect at this point. Few 20-year-olds games are at this point, no matter how dynamic they may be. And they're trying to make sure that they work with him. I think the intention is there. They have good intentions
Yeah.
to make sure that he understands. Hey, you can't cheat all the time out of the defensive zone. You can't do this. You can't make this decision here. Whatever the case is, and that's player development. And I think that's it's a part of it, but sometimes I can understand just wanting to like just letting them go and just letting them just riff out there is fun, and I think a lot of us wish that sometimes they did that, but they're thinking long term here, I think.
Yeah, and that's hard, right? It's hard when you have a team that was essentially on the doorstep of a playoff berth last year. This year, it looks like they're taking a step back. Um, you've got a team that's only won 3 out of their last 12.
Right.
And you wonder where and when do they make that decision? As the trade deadline approaches, where and when do they make that decision about who's going to be around for the next couple of years and who's worth putting on the market to see what they can get? You got the guys on Toronto, and I don't know how and where this could be spun as like the what you would talk about in the NFL is legal and illegal tampering, right? But the comments from the guys on Toronto about some of the guys on the Flyers roster, anything to glean into that at all?
Yeah, I think there's rumors out there with I think it's primarily coming from like Toronto beat reporters and things like that
Yeah,
the Maple Leafs have really kind of been interested in Scott Lawton, and that that might be something that he's a hot name. I think Elliot Friedman recently had said that on
right.
his podcast, which is not all that surprising in terms of the Flyers have had interest. I know that they've had interest in him before from other teams. Um, And Rasmus Ristolainen's name is also another one. Farabee and Frost are guys; their names have come up in the past. So I mean, not specifically with Toronto, but just in rumors.
Right.
And I think it's just it's one of these things where um, I don't know if they haven't dealt them before. I don't know that they're going to be eager to deal him now just because they value so much of what he does off the ice. Scott Lawton's
Right.
a very well liked player. Um, and
Listen, he's a guy that's in the he's guys that he's involved in the charities, he's involved in the community, and for whatever that's worth, right? Not like like that excludes the on ice production, but we know that, and for whatever reason, that means something in this organization. His contract is going to go through what the end of the 25-26 season.
I believe so, yeah.
So, he's got time left so that you're not necessarily you're not in a spot where like if you don't move him at the end, like by the trade deadline, that you're going to lose him.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to what the offer is. right?
Right.
If the offer for him makes sense for this team moving forward in terms of collecting assets, draft picks, um, players, prospects, whatever that is. I'm not sure what they'd be looking for in return. Um, and I also don't know what I guess maybe what's his value. Like if you had to, maybe not specific players from the Maple Leafs organization and farm system stuff, but like if you're looking for a package back
Yeah.
for Scott Lawton, what would that package look like?
I think the Flyers are really looking for a first round pick back. I don't know though. Like, I feel like if they would have gotten that at this point, that they would have dealt him already. Or if or at least the Flyers seem to really do, as you said, Don. Like they really do seem to value the. Uh, it's not. John Tortorella speaks about it quite a bit. The organization talks about it quite a bit. Like they talk about the culture aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
They see Scott Lawton, I think, is a real essential piece to that. And you know, I think a first round pick. I think the Flyers have kind of looked for that. I think that that's what they should be asking for. Teams do crazy things at the
Yeah.
deadline and stuff, especially in pursuit of a cup. When you feel like you're just a couple of pieces away, there is no first round pick on the planet that is, uh, gonna prevent you from, you know, uh,
No.
getting the cup. So
And listen, Mark, if there is a franchise in the NHL that is more starved for a cup
yeah,
and has been more futile in the playoffs, it's the Maple Leafs.
yeah,
It's wild.
yeah,
Mark, I would argue that the NBA analogy for the Maple Leafs is the Sixers,
yeah, yeah. Very similar.
right? Right? Ton of top end talent. You fill in the roster with a bunch of other role guys, and then you get to the playoffs and you're not getting past the second round, um, which is kind of wild considering the top end talent that they have in Toronto is wild. And to add, if you had the opportunity to add a guy like Scott Lawton, right? Because Scott Lawton is not young, right? He's going to bring a lot of NHL experience. He's going to bring a lot of grit and toughness to that team. But he's also going to be a productive offensive player, which for them, obviously with the guys that they got on their roster, he wouldn't need to come in and do a ton, but he would fit a lot of roles that they might need
Yeah,
for a cup run.
right.
And
Yeah,
you're right. And if you go make that cup run, right? Nobody cares about the prospects. Nobody cares about the draft picks.
right.
Nobody cares about any of it because they're all collecting Stanley Cup champion merchandise.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, I think the key part or the biggest part of Lawton's value for a team would be what he could bring to your team on the penalty kill. I mean, Lawton's been
Mm,
a really great PKer here for a little while. He's certainly he last year, I think, wasn't he? He was. I'm pretty sure he led the league last year in shorthanded points. Um, and he's a real threat on the penalty kill. And a guy that him and Konechny teamed up last year for countless chances and goals, shorthanded goals last year. And I think that would be like if you want to shore up your penalty killing and you're a contender, you could do a lot worse than Scott Lawton if he's really available.
mhm.
And then as we mentioned, all those other things he brings kind of to the locker room and stuff like that, and you know just a really, really well liked player, and it seems like a really good guy, hard worker, and uh, he would bring a lot. I think he'd bring a lot to a team, and I can understand why the Flyers are coming, to other teams that are calling them about him that like they want a first round pick. Maybe they're not comfortable doing that on January 11th, but at the
Right.
at the deadline and you're getting closer to, Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you're a team that is going to be there, you might want to reconsider that. So I think, and that could serve the Flyers well, whether they use that pick and package it with other picks for in a trade to get something that they need now, or they just decide to use it. Um, it's good to have them. For a team in the Flyers predicament, it's good to have them.
Oh, at this point in the game, Mark, there's only one way to go. you can only go up.
Yeah,
You're in the same conversation right now, right? If you look at the bottom of the standings, right, you're in the same conversation, with the Blackhawks and the Sharks, the Sabres, right? You're talking teams that are in the the low 30s of points. I got to imagine that decision happens sooner than later,
yeah,
in terms of you know making that decision on which way to go. But I am curious because there are going to be teams. When you look at Vegas and you look at Minnesota and Winnipeg, um, you look at the Capitals. The Capitals are going to be that to me was a little bit of a surprise to see
yeah,
them kind of take a huge step forward with a roster that has a lot of experience but not a ton of roster. And then you look at the Maple Leafs, right? The Maple Leafs are where they are where they are right now, the same place they are every year, right? They're atop the Atlantic with 56 points, and they're a team that's going to be. There are a number of teams that are going to be primed to add guys like that, and I think there's going to be a market. There are guys on the roster that are going to have value to those teams.
yeah, yeah. I would imagine so. We'll see what happens as we get closer, and two,
Most definitely.
things will change. Like guys will get hurt. You never know. Like for a team that you lose somebody of value and you're going to lose them for X amount of time, you need someone to you need an immediate upgrade right away, and
That's
uh,
true.
you never know what could happen between now and then, and so that's kind of where they're at. I mean, it's funny because I don't think just in general here, if you look like the last 5 games or so, I really don't think they've played that poorly. But uh, you know, not including the Dallas game where they did actually play poorly, but it was they hadn't really played that poorly, and but your record is what your record is, and um, I think that too, that Dallas game was really kind of, because Dallas is also a very good team, and I think it was kind of a measuring stick game for the Flyers. Kind of, there's still a lot of work to be done here in this rebuild. Like, there's a team coming there as actual contender, and good teams when they have off nights, as we saw kind of like against Toronto, they can still kind of find a way. They can get enough from their top players and um, to find a win, to get a win, even when they don't have their best stuff. And uh, when the Flyers didn't have their best stuff against Dallas, they got ran over. So it was, yeah,
You really when you encounter games like that you really do get a chance to like take a step back and be like, oh, maybe we're not where we thought we were.
yeah,
We had a good opportunity last year. It didn't happen. I think it didn't happen because of the moves that you made at the trade deadline. You really saw the effects of moving those guys off your roster and not being able to replace them. But you know, there are some bright spots. Like Mitchkov is second on the team in points. Um, Electric when he has the puck. Great playmaker, like as advertised, like we've talked about. But um, talk to me about where he is, and then in terms of like rookie of the year.
yeah. I mean, he's right. He's right in the middle with Macklin Celebrini and some of these other high end uh, rookie players. I think Stankoven from Dallas is in there. Logan Stankoven.
Hmm.
Um, is Lane Hudson is, I believe, is a rookie too, defenseman from Montreal. He might be in that mix. He's been really great for them. But he's right in that he's right in the middle of the race. I mean, he should be at the very least he should be a finalist, I think. And um,
I got to imagine.
yeah, I would imagine he'd be a finalist. Uh, it's pretty crazy. Like the Flyers have never had a Calder Trophy winner. Like they've never had a Rookie of the Year. So
Really?
yeah, they've never had a Calder Trophy winner. And so I mean, he would be making club history, if he were to win it. But it would be he's right in the mix. I mean, he has been as advertised. Like I said, we talked a little bit about the kind of playing versus the development aspect of it, and the Flyers trying to bring him along at a reasonable pace. But
All right. So just to give you the odds,
okay,
right? I'm going to pull up. They are not a sponsor, but you can be if you want to. DraftKings. Matt. So Celebrini is minus 180. Mitchkoff is right behind him, but at plus 220.
okay, yeah,
So you can kind of see that there is a gap. But then after those two, right, Lane Hudson is a guy you just mentioned is at plus 450.
yeah,
So it's really between those three guys.
right, right,
The next guy, fourth on the list, is a guy in Calgary, Dustin Wolf,
okay, yeah, the goalie,
but he's at plus 6,000.
okay,
So it goes from minus 180 to plus 210 to plus 450 to plus 6,000. So it's real. It really looks like it's a three horse race, and I would tell you that it's probably just two. Um, but between the two of them, they're exciting young players and really productive coming in their first year.
yeah,
But you know, this is a guy you're going to have to build around, and it's a
yeah,
guy that you're going to need to start surrounding him with talent, so that you can really. Because I don't think you're going to see his. You're not going to be able to see his ceiling without surrounding him with like top end talent.
right,
Um,
right,
and I got to imagine that starts with trying to find your center of your future to be able to that number one. And I know that that's something that like every team is looking for. Um, and once a team gets one, they're not getting rid of it. So that's where I think like where they are, if they can sell enough pieces to be crappy enough to put themselves in a position to get the best odds, to put themselves. I think the more that you can do that and stockpile draft picks, the more that you can kind of put yourself in a position that if there is a guy like that, even if it's at number one, even if that means you mortgage more than you want to, I think getting a guy to pair with Mitchkoff at the top and really accentuate his talents, like where they can really both kind of play off each other. That's to me where I kind of see that vision going.
yeah, yeah. I mean that you hit the nail right on the head, like with the number one center thing. You know, the Flyers are going to have a couple different ways to try to acquire that player. Whether they, um, are they truly going to be bad enough to pick in the draft a player that um, can make that difference, or as we mentioned before, you package some of these first round picks and some of this draft equity, and you get a player that's already in the league that maybe hasn't quite um, like for example, there's a lot of rumors out there about Buffalo's Dylan Cousins, them dealing Dylan
Okay.
Cousins. He's the type of player that the Flyers should be all about, all in on. There are guys in trade rumors right now that either are one first line centers or uh, have the potential to be uh, out there. And Elias Pettersson from the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, that seems like a
Okay.
crazy him and there's some other players he doesn't quite get along with, or whatever the case is. There's some drama going on in Vancouver right now. That's why he's out there.
Sure.
But if you're the Flyers, I mean, you can't really afford to be picky, and he'd be a great addition to a team. He's 26 years old. He could fit the
Right.
timeline. He could probably accelerate the timeline. And there's your center for the next 10 years with Michkov. There's ways to do it. It's just they're going to have to find the it's going to take a
They're
little.
gonna have to get creative. Yeah, you're
They're going to
right.
have to get creative, and they're going to have to be a little aggressive, I think. And I think that's kind of the crux of a lot of fans' frustrations right now, is they just don't
Yeah.
feel maybe that they are aggressive enough in trying to pursue that, and they're just
'Cause
waiting to see how the draft plays out.
yeah, you're bad, but you're not. It's almost like you're not bad enough to be at the top, to like pick at the top of the draft. Because like I'm pulling up the standings right now, right, and I'm just looking at just the points, and you've got Buffalo at 30, San Jose at 32, Nashville at 33. You've got Seattle and Buffalo at 37, and then you've got the Flyers and the Ducks at 39.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're
it's
looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, like seventh or eighth worst record.
yeah,
So like if you have the draft capital to move up from 7 into the top 2 or 3, maybe that's a thing.
right,
But
right,
I don't know if you're going to be able to sell enough to be able to get bad enough to be in the top
right,
3 conversation.
right. And yeah, I mean, like unless too, and I guess this is always a possibility. Something in the draft kind of goes, some of the cards kind of fall your way, kind of like it did when the Flyers got Michkov. Like, if there wasn't, you know, if there wasn't a war going on between Russia and Ukraine and all those other things, I don't know that the Flyers are able to draft him at 7. He's probably gone by then.
Oh,
Um,
I would tell you, yeah, 100%.
so, so like, things kind of worked out. He didn't want to play. Uh, Apparently, he didn't want to play in Phoenix/Utah or whatever. I don't even think they were. There was rumors about them going to Utah at that point. Um, so there was kind of those. There was other factors at play, and maybe something like that works out again. But that's you're praying for a lot of things to fall your way if you're waiting for that. So
Yeah.
we'll wait to see how it goes. And the East is so jumbled this year. I mean, the Flyers are
It
like,
really is.
they're 2 points from last place, but 5 points from the last playoff spot, which is
Yeah.
basically a 3-game win streak, which is
Yeah.
not difficult to do. You know what I mean? Like,
And this is where I'm at, right? Like
yeah,
I'm at like what is going to be the like breaking point where we're like, that's what we're gonna do. Like I'm
right.
curious what it's gonna take. Because like we said, they've lost what, 9 out of the last 12.
Mhm.
The play in that most recent game doesn't look great. They're taking on another, team who's kind of in the same. I'm curious about tonight, right? Because you got the whole Cutter Gauthier coming back to the barn, coming in. I'm sure the the people will be getting their vocal cords warmed up for the warm up for the Birds game on Sunday is going to be the Saturday night Cutter Gauthier coming back to play in Philly,
Yeah.
which I'm sure the Boo Birds are going to be raining down.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right, I'm sure everybody's got their tea and honey, getting the vocal cords all prepped and ready. They're the tailgates are going to be in full force. I know Flyers. There's enough Flyers home games that it's not normally a huge tailgate, but I'm sure there's going to be enough people out there. I'm curious to see how this game plays out tonight because you're going to have a team. You're going to play a team who's kind of in the same spot as you.
Right. Right. And last time the Flyers played them in Anaheim, I mean, like they didn't look good at all in that game. So I'm sure they want to come back in here and play a better game. the Flyers are also coming off a game where they looked pretty bad, so they're going to want to, they're going to want to like get back on. This is a get right game for them. This is certainly a team they can beat, and and then of course with all the other fanfare with Cutter and things like that, I'm sure teams are or fans are very excited to let him know, welcome him here to Philadelphia after.
Yeah, I'm very curious about the T-shirt designs from the guys in the parking lot, because those are always the best. Those are always like the most creative. The sentiments that are expressed on those shirts. So I'm curious what are going to be the homemade what you printed on your Cricut machine at home T-shirt designs for tonight, because the internet never disappoints, especially when we've got somebody that we want to furiously boo. So that has me a little bit intrigued. Are you going to be down there tonight?
I will be there. Yes. Yep. I'll
Nice.
be there covering the game. So I'll have a story out the next day on firedupsports.com, kind of recapping all that stuff, including what goes down with Cutter Gauthier tonight. And so that
we might need some tailgating post pre and post game tailgate comments from the people walking in the building.
Yeah, I might have to do like stop and do a couple man on the street interviews, see how people are feeling.
I love it. I love it. All right. Anything else? We'll put a bow on this, and then on the backside we'll talk about the Sixers. Anything else Flyers wise you want to jump in on?
I don't think so. I mean, like they're in a rut right now. I mean, like, but as I said, like, and as we were talking about here about the standings and where they're headed and all that other stuff. I mean, things are so like kind of jammed together that it could change how they view it. I don't know if I think that should be that fluid, especially when you're admittedly saying that you're in a rebuild and all, and don't be using the standings to turn around and justify why you kept a guy or things like that, because that's kind of all over the place. So
very true.
But the next show will be on in a couple weeks, and I'm sure we could be talking about something completely different. You know what I mean? Like,
listen, Mark, they could win a couple games in a row and go from 9th place to 4th place.
Yeah, they might be in a wild card spot by the next time.
It's crazy. You're right. Like as I'm looking at it, right, they're tied with the Islanders for 39 points, right? But when you look at the teams that are in the playoff hunt, right? Pittsburgh's at 44, Montreal's at 43, and Detroit's at 42, and Ottawa's at 41. Like you're right. They're all literally like the Bruins are at the top of the wild card with 45 points.
Yeah, it's
and the Flyers are at 39, right? So they're 6 points out of the top wild card spot.
Yeah, 6 points out of getting in a spot, and then just 2 wins and an overtime loss out of just being like in the mix again. So it's just kind of. It's the way the league is now with the the point system and all that. Like I said, I don't know that they should be using that as justification for their future plans. They should definitely be thinking about, as we talked about, what's coming next. Who's going to play with Mitchkov in the future. That's a big thing. We have some guys locked up here. But they obviously need more talent, and that's continued to be the case, even when they're playing well. I mean, it's just kind of it's pretty noticeable, but it's especially noticeable when you're running the teams like the Maple Leafs and the Stars and stuff like that.
Most definitely. All right. Well, listen, on the back end, we'll talk all things. We'll check in on the Sixers, but on the way out, go Flyers.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
Swing and a miss. Struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes!
Iverson, wow, what a fake on Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
All right, well, now we're on to episode 255, talking all things Sixers. It's Mark, it's been interesting to see this team compete, and I'm going to use compete very generously, because it's been you're looking at a team who, to say they've been frustrating to watch is a wild understatement. You're not getting any continuity with any of the guys on the court. It seems like it's just like a grab bag of whoever is healthy enough to play. So you're not getting the play on the court is inconsistent. The guys that are playing from night to night, you got nights where Reggie Jackson's getting minutes, nights where Tucker's getting minutes. You got nights where did I just say PJ? Did I just say
You did.
Tucker? He's not even on the goddamn roster. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to say the least, because when you look at the aspirations that we had going into this season, I mean, we really were talking about a team that was going to compete at the top end of the East, and really look at how Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, and how when they play together can really complement each other, and we're just not getting it. We're not getting it at all. And then you have a loss like last night. That's just, I would argue with you, Mark. That's might be, out of all the losses that they've had, might be their worst loss.
Yeah. Last night was rough, and it could have been. Ironically, I mean, it could have been Wednesday too against the Wizards, where they didn't really look much. They didn't look great either.
It came pretty damn close.
It did, and I mean, God, where do you start with it? I mean, the Pelicans are what, 8-31 or something like that this year. And
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but it is laughable.
yeah, and it's like it's one of those games too where it's like, well, we don't have Embiid or we don't have whatever. Okay, I mean, like, the Pelicans aren't very good anyway, but Zion didn't play in that game. You know what I mean? And he's their best player, so it's like, yeah,
Mark, the Pelicans are 8-31.
8-31
at the bottom of the West. They are the last team in the West.
Yeah.
They have played horrifically, but you managed to let them kind of just hang out, and you let them hang around long enough, and you
right.
I just I don't know.
Yeah.
I literally, I find myself saying I don't know a lot. Like, when you look at the guys that they're playing, and when you look at who's out, and when you go through their roster and their depth chart, like Embiid out, Lowry out, KJ Martin out, Andre Drummond out, like Jared McCain. Jared McCain is a guy who between the last show and this show is now out for the season. you're trying to piecemeal it together with Maxey and Oubre and Paul George and Caleb Martin. The guy that I want to spend some time on, and we can talk about how frustrating the guys being out is, but in a minute, the guy that I want to give some shine, I want to give him his flowers, is Yabusele. He's
Oh
been
yeah,
a breath of fresh air.
yeah, he's been great. And there was potential for that. I mean, coming into the year, like him having a role on this team, but we didn't quite know what that was going to be. He has been a breath of fresh air. And they need that depth. I mean, like they obviously need that depth. I mean, it's very to have another guy who can uh, another guy with some like when you're down Drummond and Embiid, you need the size and he's
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're looking at the minutes are getting split between him and Adim Bona, who, for all intents and purposes, should be polishing his craft with the blue coats.
yeah
Um,
yeah
but he's because of the way that the injuries have played out, he's now not just playing, but like actually having to play meaningful minutes.
yeah he's got to give you minutes because you don't have anybody else, and then I look at last night too, and this happened Wednesday. I mean, um, like Maxi is trying to get into, he's trying to carry the load offensively, but like when you get a start, both back to back nights he had really tough shooting shooting nights at least to start. I think he began last night 0 for 7 from the field. Um, he started Wednesday's game 3 for 14. You know what I mean? So um,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of pressure. He eventually he picked it up after the first, but even against bad NBA teams, you can't really you can't go out there and you can't have shooting performances like that and expect to, even in a game that's now kind of games are now highlighted by the runs, right? Like teams go on, it's kind of like it's a game of runs now, you know,
Yeah.
it's like 3 runs, and it's just you can't be that ice cold. And then of course, CJ McCollum got hot, and then that kind of started changing the complexion a little bit. So it's just I it's hard because I don't want to I don't want to sit here done and dock the guys that are playing, the guys that are
No, I think I'm kind of in the same spot, right? Like
right,
I'm not going to sit here and give the guys that are playing, I'm not giving them a hard time. It's not their fault, but
right,
like when Tyrese Maxey is not built to carry the roster,
yeah,
which essentially at this point is what he's being asked to do. Like Paul George was brought in here to be the third wheel,
right,
and he is not at a position in his career where he can carry the roster either.
right,
So you got two guys that are holding weight, and you got Embiid playing, right? He has that stretch going into the beginning of January where he's scoring 28, 27, 30. Like he was putting up he had like a 5-game, trying to pull it up. He had that 5-game stretch going into January 4th where he had 28, 37, 32, and 27, right? Like had a really, really good stretch going into, that between Christmas and New Year's on that road trip. But like you're looking at this roster, and I'm going like I'm not mad at the guys that are playing,
yeah,
but like when you have to get meaning, Eric Gordon was not brought here to play meaningful minutes.
right,
Neither was Reggie Jackson or Ricky Council. They were all brought here to be, even Caleb Martin, who's, he was meant to be the 5th option
right,
in that
yeah,
starting 5.
yeah,
And, when you bring in guys to fill those roles, and then you have guys that are out, and then you have to elevate their roles, and it's not just for one game, but
mhm,
it's for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at them. It just sucks.
Yeah, it does. And then, and this is the problem, again, like and we've talked about this on previous shows. Maybe over the summer, when we talked about them acquiring George and all that, maybe we didn't really give enough to the fact that, maybe shine enough light on the fact that like this could have, like in situations where, guys are out or whatever, that this could look like this because you're going to have so many guys that are brought here, as you said, to be depth pieces and are guys that I have no doubt. You mentioned them, guys like KJ Martin, players like even players who've like kind of like worked their way onto the radar, like Yabusele or Ricky Council, for example. Like in their roles, they're adequate and they're fine and they can help you win games. But when you don't have when you have such like inconsistency rather with your stars and guys playing and not playing, it's one thing, and we've seen this like with other teams around the league with roster like load management and things like this. It's like it's difficult when it's one guy. Ask the Clippers how they feel about dealing with Kawhi's situation and how often he hasn't played. You know what I mean? Like,
Very true.
and then it like then to have like two guys or three guys, you know what I mean, that are meant to
Yeah, very
be
true.
playing meaningful roles and they're in and out and you don't know really who's playing or when they're going to be playing, and then they have to have their scheduled days to rest, and it's like they're not in a position right now to be able to even like accommodate those things. Like they need some guys to play.
Yeah,
uh
and with the way that the contracts are structured, there's not a lot of roster flexibility to be able to
no.
get creative. There's just you don't have a lot of assets to move, and you don't have a lot of like the players. I would argue with you. You don't have a lot of guys that other teams want. Like the trades have to work both ways. You have to have something or someone that someone else wants, and I don't see those guys on this roster, and I don't see a lot of the assets that you can move to supplement the guys that are on the roster. It's just a really you kind of went all in with this formula, and it's just not working out the way that you thought it might,
Mhm.
which kind of sucks because right now you're not even in the conversation for the play. Like you're 2.5 games out of the play-in, the
Mhm.
last play-in spot.
Right.
Right, like you're a team that's going to be on the back end of the lottery, which is like you're starting to see guys come into the league out of college and be productive, but you know if it were me, Mark, and this is just me being fan guy GM, when Embiid went out, I would have told him take the year, go get healthy,
Yeah.
take a mulligan, take the year, right? Be as bad as you possibly sell off whatever you can, be as bad as you can possibly get, try to get the best player to supplement your roster, and then regroup next year when everybody can be healthy.
Right.
Because right now, this like I play one game, I don't play the next three. It's not a recipe that works, and it's not like we've seen the NBA like. And to be honest, right, and we can talk about this in a minute, the product of the NBA is not a great one at baseline. But when you talk about like this is not a light switch, right? You don't just get to the playoffs, you get in and you just flip a switch, and now all of a sudden Embiid plays every night, and now all of a sudden this magical continuity between him and Maxey and Paul George, and everybody kind of just like slides into the role. It's just not going to happen. We've watched this movie way too many times.
Yeah.
Watching this Sixers team not be able to get past the second round, and I'm trending in the direction that this ship has kind of started to sail.
Right.
Like they're undoing the ropes off the dock. The guys are on the side of the boat, kind of kicking it off the dock, and it's just floating. They haven't turned the engine on, but it's getting there to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that was it. Again, for anybody that thought that, I may have said this on previous shows. I don't remember, but I feel as though we talked about it. It's just like you cannot take when you have this many pieces that are coming in that are new or maybe haven't played with each other before. You cannot take the first half of the season. Like that's the opportunity to build chemistry. You can't start like learning how to read off guys in February and March and expect to have any reasonable degree of like success if you even make the play in. It's like it's just not that's not how it works in the league. There's a reason why like teams like Boston and Milwaukee or whoever is at the top
Cleveland.
of Cleveland are at the top. These guys have played together and they've been playing together.
Yeah.
And they know what works for them. And they know when a guy's going, when he's not going, or you know what I mean? And I just don't think the Sixers have that right now, where like I don't think Maxey and Embiid and George have spent nearly enough time on the floor together to know in a meaningful game what they need from each other.
Yeah. I
To
mean, Mark, I would argue with you, right? Like that, like when I pull up just going through the injuries on the Sixers depth chart, and then when I pull up the Cleveland Cavaliers, right, Donovan Mitchell's day to day.
right,
Everybody else is fully healthy,
right,
right? I'm not pulling up the game logs, but I bet you if I went to look at the stats and look at they're all when you look at their game splits, right? A lot of their guys that are playing meaningful minutes have all played in 30 plus games.
yeah, yeah,
It's it's the kind of thing where when you look at like Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, they've all played more. So they've put the Cavs have played 37 total games. They've all played more than 31.
right,
Which
yeah,
means they're all playing together. They're building. They're doing exactly what you're describing, where they're building that team chemistry. And I bet you it would be consistent if we go up and down the teams at the top of the East. It's just like I don't know. I don't know where. I don't know where to go with this team, and a lot of that has to do with where this team is, and I don't know where you go from here.
right,
Right,
right.
like you're locked in. It's almost like we are locked in to this group for the next 3 years,
Right. Yeah,
2 years, 3 years at the least.
right. And they only have, I think their only reasonable plan is going to be they're going to have to they have to try to make it and they have to try to compete. Otherwise, I mean, like sitting here and just trying like you as we said at the top of the show or you said Don was like it's not like there's a trade to be made here. There's not like you have to have expirings to make the money work. You have to have like actual draft equity that you can move or feel comfortable moving. And I don't know that that would be wise if you're the Sixers already.
Right.
But it's just like those are the types of things you have to do in order to like get any kind of clear upgrade on anybody
True.
in the league. And it's just like not, in the Sixers' current predicament, it's just not smart to do that. So all they have to do is just they're going to have to figure out a way to play with these guys. Like it's just like
you're going to need the coach to get creative. You're going to need
Yeah.
the coach to figure out a way to squeeze the water out of the concrete.
Yeah.
and figure it out, right? Because when you look at I'm looking at a stat from John Clark. The Sixers without Joel Embiid, 8-15.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, and I don't have the inverse stat. I'm just looking at what he had just shared about an hour ago. That tells you that you can't play. That this team is built to be played with him on the court.
Right.
When you take him off the court, it looks awful.
Right.
Right. And then you look at the guys that are on their roster, right? Because you're not going to trade Maxey, George, and Embiid. Right. So you start looking at the other guys. And stop me if you hear a guy that another team might want. Right? Like Eric Gordon, Ricky Council, Adeem Bona, Caleb Martin, Yabusele maybe, Reggie Jackson, who's, going to be collecting Social Security in a couple years. Eric Gordon, same thing. They're going to be standing in line at the office together. Like Kelly Oubre, maybe. Like there's maybe one or two guys, but all right. If you wanted to trade Caleb Martin or Kelly Oubre, what are you getting?
Right. Yeah.
You're not getting first round draft picks, even though the first round draft picks in the NBA mean absolutely nothing. Like
Yeah.
they're really, like, teams will trade them, but until the depth in the draft improves, especially where the Sixers are picking,
Right. Yeah.
like, what are you getting back?
The only way it would be to take some of those guys that have like a player like Oubre, for example. It would just kind of be like you're taking that player and you're hoping to get like some kind of clear upgrade because the money works. You know what I mean? It's not really like even maybe like for like it's not even like a pure like value for value kind of thing. It's more but like as you said, like those deals don't typically happen without draft capital attached to them, and the Sixers. I mean, they're where they'd be picking. I mean, I don't know that teams would be like knocking down the door to get that, but even if they were, I mean, it's still like, if they were, the Sixers would probably be wise to just keep the picks because they probably need them. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's terrible.
It's true. And listen, all summer long, right? How many times did we say like they're going to trade that pick? The pick, and it's in the middle of the first round.
Mhm.
There's nobody there that's going to help you. You're going to trade that pick. You're going to figure out a way to get a guy on this roster who's going to have veteran experience. And they sat tight and they picked Jared McCain. And before he got injured, he was probably the best thing that they had going.
Yeah.
And the only reason why this team didn't like implode on itself like early on in the season.
Right. Yeah. And that was that's really devastating for that kid. And he was playing well prior to that, and I hope he comes back healthy next year and he's ready to rock.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
I'm sure a lot of people are thirsty for the TikToks to come back too.
yeah. But I mean, that was unfortunate, and but that was just like another, you're just getting it from all sides right now for the Sixers, and just getting that news. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, of course he's going to be out for the remainder of the year. You know what I mean? And he's actually been a bright spot for you. But yeah, I mean, like the only choice though, as we've said here, I think it's just they're going to have to start finding ways to. They're going to have to try to find ways to get in. They have to get in. They're taking the toughest road possible. I mean, to get in, to go through the
You ain't
play.
lying on that one.
So you're going to get like Cleveland or Boston in round one if you even make it that far. So it's just kind of like, it's a tough spot to be in, but certainly not what we expected this year. And but I think if we were, if we were taking a step back, I think there was definitely potential for this to kind of go off the rails like this. But it was just like, I don't know if we just wanted to believe that it was a good thing, but I definitely think looking back on it, there was some potential for this here, and
And listen, when you look at their next stretch of games, it's not going to get any easier. You're going to play on Sunday. If I go through the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? You're going to play at Orlando, which Orlando's tough.
Yeah.
You're going to play at OKC. You're going to play, home against New York. Then you're going to play Milwaukee, at Milwaukee, at Denver, and then come home and play Cleveland.
No, God.
Like you got it. You like tell me in that stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. How many wins do you see in those 7?
Oh man.
Right?
Hopefully
Like,
3.
whoo. I mean, listen, Mark. To be honest, I looked at that and go, like, there's an opportunity there to lose every one of those games with the way that they're playing. Right? When
Yeah.
I saw the way that they played, when they lose by 20 to Phoenix, like, or 20, they lose by 10 to Phoenix. They barely win against Washington. They lose to a horrific New Orleans team.
Mhm.
Like, you could be in a spot where you're going to lose 8 straight.
Yeah.
I just, maybe you can. It depends on how many games Embiid is going to play. But there's not an easy game in that next 7.
No.
And when I look at that and I look at how they're playing, it just, like, to me, it doesn't add up. They're going to have one of those teams is going to have an off night, right? Because that stretch, when you play on the 18th, 19th, and 21st, when you play at Indiana, at Milwaukee, at Denver, and then you come home and play Cleveland,
Yeah, that's rough.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. It's hard. It's hard to find wins on this roster or on this schedule, and I'm just looking at it going, I don't even know. I feel very apathetic
Right. Right.
about. I'm just like, eh. And this is the point I wanted to get to, where talk about the NBA in general, because
Yeah.
it has very easily become the 4th most interesting sport. And some might argue that the MLS has jumped the NBA. It hasn't, but in terms of people's personal interest,
Right.
because people just don't enjoy what is happening with the players and the load management and the whole thing with the player autonomy and their feeling of invincibility and just like, oh, I don't want to be here anymore, aka Jimmy Butler, right? Jimmy
Yeah.
Butler essentially just causes enough chaos for Miami to send him home,
Right.
and now he's out giving barista advice. Like, it's just
He
it
loves
sucks.
coffee. Yeah, he loves coffee, Jimmy Butler.
So do I.
Yeah.
And listen, I saw Bryce Harper giving his homemade barista recipe from when he makes his stuff at home. So
Oh,
maybe
okay.
that's a new thing. But it's the state of the NBA is not great.
No, it's all of those things, really. I mean, and it's a shame because if you're like a hoops fan, whether just hoops in general, like you like college hoops or the NBA, like playoff basketball is just like sublime. Like, you know what I mean? Like the games in the postseason are so interesting and exciting and
Uh-huh.
all. And it's just like, but there's like the season has just become this like, just like nobody really cares about it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's no longer like the teams
It's
that are
not
going to be,
meaningful.
no. And it's like the teams that are going to be there in the postseason are going to be there. And we already know that. And it's just like, um, to some degree, I feel like too, it's like, basketball at that level is so difficult to play that, there's just like the parity in the league is just not what it was. And there's just fewer like great players. And,
There's a lot
um,
of haves and there's a lot of have-nots.
yeah.
and there's nobody in the middle.
Right. And then, like, as you said, like um, those players are very much in control of their situations, perhaps maybe more than any other modern athlete. I mean, like, do basketball players have more control and say over what they do, when they do it, and how they do it? Um, and that's what's happening in Miami right now. I mean, like, a couple
Totally.
and perhaps there's probably, I'm sure everybody's got a point. It's not like, you know it's not like Pat Riley's. You know what I mean? It's not like he's just some guy off the street. Like, this is a champion and a guy who's won everywhere he's been. And
I mean, Pat Riley is a no bullshit guy,
yeah, and
and
he's
he
a legend.
basically he essentially called him on his bluff and was just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, really? Bye."
yeah,
Like, and I just for me, I look at it and go, and it what I'm about to suggest will never happen, but they should shorten the season.
yeah. I mean,
Like, you don't need it because right now what you just said is absolutely accurate.
right.
This essentially is an 82 game preseason for the playoffs.
Yeah,
And I'm not the first one to say that. I'm probably regurgitating that from a million different places where I've heard it.
yeah.
But like, it's an 82 game preseason,
It's
and
true.
it's the regular season games have absolutely no value. I think if you shortened the season and kicked it off on Christmas, you essentially play from January. You play from January for Christmas Day until or New Year's Day or Martin Luther King. Maybe you kick it off on MLK Day, right? Like and then you have like a 5-month season,
Yeah,
and then you start the playoffs in May, and if you cut the season in half, and the reason why the NBA got destroyed on Christmas Day in the ratings, like the Rich and I were talking about it a couple weeks ago. There were 25 million people that tuned in for the 2 NFL games, which were not great games.
no, right.
The entire slate of NBA games had 5 million people watched combined.
Well, yeah,
Like, the NBA, that day used to be owned by the NBA. No one touched it.
yeah,
The NFL got a little taste of it, and the NBA is never getting it back.
yeah, yeah.
They got absolutely destroyed.
Right.
But the reason why the NFL games get the ratings that they do is because they only play 17 of them, and they're meaning every one essentially has the same meaning for about a week worth of NBA games.
Right. Right.
So if you made the NBA games more meaningful, right? You play 2 a week. You play 1 game during the week. You play 1 game on the weekend.
Yeah.
You let the guys get the rest. You have your stars on the court probably more. Now, is that going to ever happen? That what I just proposed will absolutely. I know in my heart it will never happen
Yeah.
because the owners will never give up the gates. They'll
Right.
never give up the ticket sales. They'll never the Players Association will probably be all for it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the owners would want to prorate the salaries in half. Like there's way too much to change, but what's happening right now is just a really, really poor product.
Right. Right. Yeah, it is, and that's true. I mean, that's all true, and it's a shame. Because, like, too, it's like also, and this happened. This has happened in the past. Like, the league went through a little bit of a lull, if you remember, like after the immediate post Jordan years when he walked away. What's going to happen then when, like, the guys that are the current faces of the league, the LeBrons, the Currys, they're at the back nine of their careers. Once they're done, what happens to the league and the someone will always come along, but, like, I mean, like, the league needs. I don't know if it's like I don't know if the NBA needs another dynasty where, like, where we have kind of like an all common rooting, like we're all rooting against them, or you know what I mean, like It's just like whatever it is.
I mean, Boston might be that team,
Well, yeah, they
right? Boston's got, they've had a lot of success.
right.
They essentially ran through the regular season and postseason last year with very, 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 very little resistance.
Mm,
Um, yeah, like I don't know what it's going to take, but right now, like the NBA regular season is so unwatchable.
yeah,
Like
it's tough.
I'm the type of guy that, like, Mark, if I'm on the couch and I'm just scrolling through, right, Kip's probably next to me, trying to destroy people on Fortnite, and I'm just scrolling through, and if there's a game on, like, they like my kids know that, like, I don't have to be invested in the game to actually watch it. I
Right,
will just put it on to
right,
watch it. Um, but right now, if I've got to choose between, like, NBA, NHL, it's not even a question. I know that the NHL product is going to be so much better
right,
than whatever NBA game is on.
right, right. It's true. It's not a great time for the league, but like for all the reasons that you mentioned, why some of the things that probably need to happen won't happen. It's always about money, and that's it's probably not going to change. Although I think it would benefit the league, it would benefit the players um, if they did shorten the season and kind of made it more of like a mad dash to the NBA finals, which I think is still, I mean, at least for me, is still very much appointment television, no matter who's in it. I always watch the finals. So it's a shame, though. It's a shame because the playoff basketball really is like that shortened season to the finals is really the best. It really
It's
is.
great. I
You see a
mean,
lot of
it has the same kind of feel as the NHL playoffs,
yeah,
right? Like every game, every possession, every shot, everything means something,
yeah,
and it just doesn't ever feel that way in the NBA.
yeah,
It just doesn't,
yeah.
and for whatever that's worth. Um, Mark, anything else Sixers before I give your? I know this is a we're talking Sixers, but I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't get your birds prediction. We are talking all things Philly sports, but,
Yeah.
like, you want to just jump into what you think's going to happen tomorrow afternoon at the link?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 27, 17 Eagles. I think Jalen's
Nice.
gonna have a nice game, and I think they'll stop. I think the Eagles defense they'll make some key plays and just shut down Josh Jacobs, and they're gonna be fine. I think.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it, during the week, but, like, I feel like there's being a lot made about this Packers team without acknowledging the credit of this Eagles team.
Yeah.
And as good as some of their weapons are, I feel like you have no, like, you can mention Josh Jacobs, but when you mention Josh Jacobs and you don't mention Jalen Carter and Zach Vaughn and
Right.
you know and Jordan Davis, like, I feel like you're not having an honest conversation
Right.
when
Right.
you talk about the people aren't really talking about the importance of the loss of Christian Watson and Jair Alexander and what
Right.
that role plays for their offense and their defense. And I just feel like when you match up the position groups,
Yeah.
there's not a position group where you match it up on the opposite. Like, when I match up our offensive positions with their defensive positions, there's not a scenario where I say, oh, well, the Packers have a better unit.
Hmm.
And I think this team has this very innate ability to be able to go in and dominate. And the only way that something happens is if they beat themselves.
Right.
This team
Right.
has something special
Yeah, they're very very talented, very deep um, all positions really, and they
and
got a really
healthy.
yeah, and they're healthy. And as you said, like I didn't even mention that, but I think that Jair Alexander injury is really that's tough for Green Bay. That's a really tough thing to overcome. Because he's such a great player. So
Listen, on the way out, I feel like it's only appropriate to say go Birds because
yeah.
we've talked enough Sixers to talk ourselves in circles. But enjoy. Go to, if you're headed down to the Flyers game tonight, get your booze in early, get them in often, and then get them warmed up for Sunday for the Birds. But on the way out, go Birds.
Go Birds.